It was supposed to be a quiet Christmas Eve. Snow lined the sidewalks in Ridgewood, Ohio, one of those towns where people leave their doors unlocked and still wave to neighbors from the porch. But by midnight, a phone would ring in the county dispatch center. A boy's voice, calm, chillingly calm. "I killed her. She won't be bothering me anymore." Dispatch tried to trace the call, but the line went dead. And so began the kind of case that stains a town forever. Jennifer Langston was a name you wouldn't have known unless you lived on Millbrook Drive. A 54-year-old librarian, she lived in a modest two-story house with her only son, Nathaniel, Nate for short, who had just turned 19. To most, Jennifer was warm, the kind who made you return your overdue book with a smile, then sneak in a cookie from the staff room. But those who saw her at home knew another side. Perfectionist, controlling, fragile. Nate was a quiet boy, always had been, kept to himself. Top of his class, then suddenly dropped out after high school. People whispered. His mom said he was just figuring things out. What they didn't see were the fights, the shouting, the slammed doors. Neighbors recalled Jennifer's voice piercing through the walls on cold nights. But nobody ever called the police. It was just a single mom doing her best. Ridgewood is that kind of town. Nosy, but not enough to intervene. On Christmas Eve, Jennifer decorated their tiny artificial tree alone. Nate hadn't come down all day. She left a gift for him anyway. A sweater, dark blue, his favorite color. She even wrote a card. "For my boy, no matter what, I love you." By midnight, that sweater would be soaked in blood. The 911 call came in at 12:08 a.m. Ridgewood Dispatch. "I killed my mother. What's your name, sir? Does it matter?" Click. Officers arrived within 7 minutes. The door was ajar. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. Jennifer was lying on her back in the living room under the tree. A single stab wound to the neck. Her blood had pooled into the tree skirt like a crimson halo. The lights still twinkled above her. And beside her head, neatly placed, Nate's unopened gift. They found Nate upstairs, lying in bed, calm, almost peaceful. He didn't resist arrest, didn't ask questions, just looked the officer in the eye and said, "She wouldn't stop. She had to stop." At first, investigators thought it was a clear-cut case of domestic violence turned fatal. Another mother-son argument that escalated. But what they found next shifted the case into something far darker. While searching the house, detectives uncovered a locked trunk in Nate's closet. Inside, journals, dozens of them, each one cataloging daily thoughts, conversations, feelings. They went back 6 years. But the last 6 months were disturbing. He had documented every move Jennifer made. 12:14 a.m., she opened the fridge, drank orange juice straight from the bottle. She never poured mine. 6:02 p.m., she called me a waste of space again. I nodded, kept counting. 13 days left. I feel nothing, just ready. What was he counting down to? The final entry read, "She never realized she raised her killer. Merry Christmas, Mom." The town was horrified, but the horror had only just begun. During interrogation, Nate remained emotionless, clinical. He described the killing without hesitation, without remorse. She said, "I ruined her life. Every time I made a mistake, she'd remind me how my birth destroyed her career. Tonight, she said she wished I'd never been born. So, I made it so she wouldn't have to live with that anymore." But something about his words didn't sit right with Detective Carla Dorsey, a seasoned investigator with a mother of her own in a memory care facility. She requested a psych evaluation, suspecting deeper issues. That's when the real horror surfaced. Nate didn't just kill Jennifer because of verbal abuse. He believed she wasn't his mother at all. According to the psychiatric report, Nate claimed Jennifer had been replaced 6 months ago by someone else. She moved differently. She cooked food I hated. She wore perfume she used to say made her sneeze. She wasn't her. I don't know who she was, but she wasn't my mom. Delusions? Or something worse? What chilled investigators most wasn't the psychosis. It was what forensic techs found on Jennifer's phone. unsent emails, password-protected journals. Hidden behind a file labeled budget_2019.xlsx was a note, written 2 weeks before her death. If anything happens to me, don't believe the official story. He's not sick. He's planning something. I'm scared of my son. No one had read it in time. Just as the county prepared to arraign Nate, a new lead emerged. Detective Dorsey received a call from a psychiatric hospital 3 towns over. A former nurse had recognized Nate from a news segment. She claimed Jennifer had brought him in twice as a teenager, never admitted, never diagnosed, just consultations. But more shockingly, she said Jennifer confided in her once, in a tearful moment. He has a half-brother, somewhere. I gave him up at birth. I never told Nate. DNA results from Nate's juvenile medical records confirmed the unthinkable. Jennifer Langston had 2 sons. But here's the part that shattered everything Ridgewood thought they knew. The boy living in Jennifer's house for the last year wasn't Nate Langston. News spread fast. Local TV anchors stumbled over their scripts trying to make sense of it. Breaking news tonight in the Ridgewood Christmas Eve homicide case. Authorities now believe the man in custody is not Nate Langston. Investigators are asking, who is he? The face behind bars was familiar, but the name didn't match. At first, the county clerk assumed it was a clerical error. Nate Langston's birth records existed, medical history, school transcripts, but a closer look revealed the first anomaly. His medical records stopped after age 17. No dental updates, no immunizations, nothing. Meanwhile, the face in the holding cell bore subtle differences when compared to older photos. The shape of the jaw, the spacing of the teeth. When the FBI was called in, they ran facial recognition software through national databases. Nothing. But then a tech intern tried something unorthodox, uploading the image to a private genealogy site. A match pinged, not for Nate Langston, but for Lucas Hale. Detective Dorsey visited the Hale residence in upstate New York. An elderly woman answered the door. Evelyn Hale, shaking hands, watery eyes. She hadn't seen her grandson in over 12 years. He'd been placed in foster care after her daughter, Lucas's mother, died in a fire. Evelyn was deemed unfit to care for him. No one had heard from Lucas since he ran away from a group home at age 15. But one detail Evelyn mentioned stopped Dorsey cold. He used to talk about a boy he met at the center, said he looked just like him. They used to call them the twins. Dorsey returned to Ohio and pulled records from juvenile centers across the state. In 2018, Nate Langston had been briefly admitted to Stonebridge Behavioral Facility after a self-harm incident. His roommate for 6 weeks, Lucas Hale. Interrogation resumed. Your name is Lucas, isn't it? Silence. We know you met Nate at Stonebridge. We know he told you about his mother, his home, his life. Lucas finally looked up. You don't understand. He wanted to disappear. I gave him that. Over the course of 3 chilling hours, Lucas confessed. He and Nate had formed a strange bond. 2 broken teenagers from different tragedies. Nate opened up about his volatile relationship with Jennifer, how he sometimes wished he could vanish and start over. One night, Nate packed a bag and left. Lucas followed him to the Ridgewood bus station. He said Nate gave him his backpack, his ID. She won't know the difference, Nate had said. Take my place. Be better than I was. And Lucas did. For over a year, he lived in Jennifer's house, ate her food, walked her halls. But eventually, the fantasy collapsed. Jennifer began to notice changes. Habits, vocabulary, favorite foods. The final straw came when Lucas, pretending to be Nate, called her by her first name during an argument. Don't ever say that again, she had screamed. Who are you? She searched his room while he was out and found nothing but journals. In them, drawings, notes, distorted self-portraits labeled Lucas Hale. She confronted him, screamed, threatened to call the police. That night, he waited until she fell asleep on the couch. Then he retrieved a knife from the kitchen drawer. He sat for nearly 2 hours in silence. I didn't kill her because I hated her, Lucas said. I killed her because she was starting to see me. But where was the real Nate Langston? FBI analysts traced the route he might have taken based on the bus station log and credit card activity. A small charge showed up in Missouri, a Greyhound ticket under a fake name, purchased the day after he left home. Then nothing. Detective Dorsey feared the worst. Had Nate harmed himself? Changed identity completely? Or, more disturbingly, was he watching all this unfold? 2 weeks later, a manila envelope arrived at Ridgewood Police HQ. No return address. Inside, a disposable phone. 1 missed call. 1 saved voicemail. Detective Dorsey pressed play. You let him in. You gave him my life. Now tell me, who am I supposed to be? Nate. Detective Carla Dorsey sat alone in her office at 2:13 a.m., listening to the voicemail for the 10th time. Each word echoed like a slow drop of water in a sealed room. The sender hadn't made another call. The disposable phone was untraceable. No GPS, no data history, but the voice was unmistakably Nate's. And it was angry, not with Lucas, not with Jennifer, but with them, with everyone who hadn't noticed. Dorsey reopened the case, not of the murder, but of Nate Langston's disappearance. FBI analysts examined bus station footage, cross-referenced with ID fraud reports. A hit came from a tiny auto repair shop in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A young man, matching Nate's appearance, had applied for part-time work using the name Aaron Brooks. A coworker remembered the stranger. Quiet guy, kept to himself, smoked a lot, said he didn't have family. But 2 weeks after the Christmas murder made national news, the young man quit without a word. When shown a photo, the mechanic simply nodded. Yeah, that's him. That's the Ridgewood kid. 3 months later, early April, Ridgewood was thawing from its long winter. Detective Dorsey was called to a local park where a man had been found sleeping on a bench. No ID, just a duffel bag, a journal, and a single envelope addressed, "For the detective." Inside the envelope was a note. I didn't run because I was scared. I ran because I had to watch someone else live the life I was supposed to have. I waited for someone to notice. You didn't. She didn't. Now I'm just whatever's left. Nate. The man was Nate Langston. Dirty, malnourished, but alive. In a psychological evaluation, Nate finally opened up. After leaving Jennifer, he had planned to vanish entirely. He didn't expect Lucas to actually step into his life. He thought Lucas would run too. But when he checked Ridgewood's local newspaper online from a public library, he saw the headline. Mother found dead on Christmas Eve. Son arrested. Felt like a surreal punishment. A trade-off. His mother was gone, and someone else had taken his place. Literally. I hated her for a long time, he said softly. But I never wanted her dead. He admitted he might never have returned if not for that. But the guilt was no longer about his mother. It was about letting someone else become the monster in his name. The trial of Lucas Hale lasted 6 days. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder under advisement from his attorneys. His defense team argued diminished capacity due to mental illness and emotional trauma. His journal entries were entered as evidence. The prosecution presented a brutal timeline of deception, identity theft, and manipulation. But in the end, his confession and Jennifer's note sealed the case. Lucas was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 28. He never looked at Nate once in court. Nate never asked to see him again. Nate didn't return to the Langston home. It had been sold, the proceeds transferred to next of kin. There were none. Instead, with help from a state mental health program, he entered long-term therapy. Detective Dorsey visited him 6 months later. He was living in a modest halfway house just outside Cleveland. He didn't say much, but when she left, he handed her a letter. Asterisk, Detective, I think I finally understand. I wasn't running from my mother. I was running from the version of myself I didn't want to become. Lucas showed me what that version looked like. I don't forgive him, but I won't become him either. Asterisk. The story faded from national news. A new crime took its place. But for Ridgewood, Christmas Eve would never be the same again. Every year, on that night, the librarian's old house glows with a single candle in the window, left there by a neighbor who still remembers Jennifer's warm voice and troubled eyes. And somewhere not too far away, a young man who could have been lost forever keeps a journal of his own. This time, not to track anyone, but to find himself,